Imagine waking up and realizing the darkness isn't night, the silence isn't peace, and the wood pressing against your fingertips is a lid. It is 1790 England. The graveyards are full, the doctors are overwhelmed, and death, in the age before stethoscopes, before pulse oximeters, before any reliable way to confirm that a heart had truly stopped, is little more than an educated guess. Cholera sweeps through towns in weeks. Fever strikes without warning. And physicians, doing their best with the tools they have, sometimes get it wrong, sometimes terribly wrong. When graveyards in Europe are exhumed to make room for the newly dead, workers begin finding something that should not exist: scratch marks on the inside of coffin lids, fingernails broken and bloodied, dragged across wood in the dark, bodies repositioned, faces turned sideways, pressed against the satin lining, as if straining for air that was never there. The medical establishment is forced to confront an unspeakable truth. Some of their patients had been buried alive. The fear spreads faster than any plague. Newspapers publish accounts. Pamphleteers fuel the panic. A German doctor, Johann Gottfried Taberger, calculates that the wait before burial should be extended, that the symptoms of death and the symptoms of catalepsy, coma, and deep narcotic sleep are, to the untrained eye, nearly identical. People begin writing provisions into their wills. Do not bury me for 3 days. Pierce my heart before the lid is sealed. Cut off my head. The terror has a name now: taphephobia, the fear of being buried alive. And it is entirely rational. In 1829, a man named Johann Gottfried Taberger submits a design: a small bell mounted above the grave on a thin iron post, connected by a cord, threaded down through the earth, through the coffin lid, tied gently to the fingers of the person within. If they wake, if they move, the bell rings. It is elegant in its simplicity, devastating in what it implies about the world that required it. The safety coffin is born, but the safety coffin is only part of the solution. Germany, in the 19th century, begins constructing Leichenhäuser, waiting mortuaries, buildings where the recently dead are laid out in warm rooms, hands threaded with strings, attached to alarm bells above, watched by attendants day and night. The body is observed for 3 days, and sometimes longer, for signs of breathing, for warmth, for movement. The attendants record their vigils in logbooks. Most entries are silent, most bodies stay still, but not all. Records from a Munich waiting mortuary, 1822, a woman brought in after apparent death from typhoid fever. 3rd day of observation. The bell rings. The attendant rushes in. The woman is breathing. Her fingers are moving. She is returned to her family alive 6 days after being declared dead. Her name is not recorded in history, but she is not the only one. Across Europe, as the system spreads, similar accounts emerge, enough that the waiting mortuaries expand, that the practice is defended vigorously by the medical establishment. The bell had worked, but for every bell that rang in time, there were those that rang when no one was close enough to hear, or rang in the wind, a false alarm, or, most heartbreaking of all, those whose hands were tied too loosely, who woke in the dark, who felt the cord, who pulled, and heard, faintly, above 6 feet of earth, a bell they would never know had rung. By the late 1800s, the stethoscope becomes reliable. Medical understanding of death deepens. The crises of misdiagnosis gradually, not immediately, not cleanly, begin to recede. The Leichenhäuser close, one by one. The safety coffins become curiosities, displayed in museum cases behind glass, explained with polite captions about Victorian anxiety. But the inventors were not anxious eccentrics. They were engineers who had heard the screaming from below the ground and refused to do nothing. In a churchyard in Nottingham, there is a grave with an iron pipe still protruding from the earth. The bell is long gone. The cord has rotted, but the pipe remains. A breathing hole, some say. A panic passage, just in case. The grave is over 200 years old. We do not know if its occupant ever needed it. We only know that someone who loved them could not bear the thought that they might. The next time you hear a bell, church tower, doorbell, the soft chime of a clock at midnight, pause for 1 second. And think about what it costs the world to understand that a bell could also be a cry for help. That the line between sleep and death, between the living and the buried, was once so thin that an entire civilization built machines to listen for it. They listened because they had to. Because once in the dark, someone rang, and no one came.